Hi, my name is Brittany Dejean from Inclusion Jumpstart, and today we're going to have a conversation to explore the spectrum of human experience and challenge assumptions about disability. Today I'm chatting with Elizabeth Patterson to talk about her story and dig into the misconceptions that create unnecessary barriers for people with disabilities. We're here to listen and learn, so we'll get right into it. So, hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here with me today.
Hi, Brittany. Thank you for having me. It's been ages, but thank you for having me. It's good to be connected again.
It's good to see you too. I would love if you could just start off by telling everyone a little bit about yourself and where you're from, what you do, and anything you want to share.
All right. I'm Elizabeth Patterson, founder and executive director, still executive director of the Girls Education Initiative of Ghana, GIG, a nonprofit organization that I founded about 11 years ago, based here in Ghana to give access to inclusive and quality education for girls and people with disabilities here in Ghana and do a lot of advocacy work globally. I'm also a mother to two beautiful kids, but I'm someone who acquired a disability. Guess a little bit halfway, more than halfway through my life. And so I've been living in this, I've been calling it the gray area where I don't like this phrase. I am starting to more and more identify as a person with a disability, or accept, I don't want to say identify, accept me being a person with a disability because I live in that life and the dual perspective of I spent 18 years of my life as a quote unquote normal person, and then my car accident happened and everything changed for me. So it's kind of reshaped me and my purpose in life, the work that I do and things that I'm passionate about.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know your advocacy journey has been one that's been evolving, especially
Mhm.
when it comes to disability work. I'd love if you
Mhm.
could share a little bit, because I think when we first met back over 10 years ago, maybe it's been,
Yeah. Yeah.
I met you working for the Girls Education Initiative in
Hmm.
Ghana, so which
Hmm.
wasn't as specifically tied to disability. And so,
Hmm.
how has disability become a part of your advocacy journey, and what has that looked like?
Okay. So I remember when I came to Ghana while in grad school, and I was like, okay, I want to, or before I went to grad school, I was pushed to really be in the classroom and teach. And I experienced numerous students who were struggling, and a big part of me felt like it must be because they have learning disabilities or learning differences. So when I finished grad school and decided to move back home, be a returnee, and found this organization, I was advised by no other than my own sister, who said to me, well, there's a lot of nonprofits out there, as you know, and a lot of them dealing with education, girls' education being more so a niche. But if you want it to be different from anything else that's out there, why don't you let it reflect your journey as true as it could be and make it more geared towards inclusive education? So
Mhm.
about 11 years ago, decided to have the mission statement reflect inclusive education. I had done some research on education access for people with disabilities in South Africa, in the US, and in Ghana. And so it only seemed to make sense that I advocate for that in my line of work.
That's really interesting. And one of the things that I like to chat with people about is kind of the misconceptions about disability that are so prevalent. And so,
Mhm.
whether it be in your research or your own personal experience
Mhm.
in your life or in your work, what are some
Okay.
of the misconceptions or misunderstandings you feel that people have about disability that makes you have a job to advocate for inclusive
Okay.
education?
So, in your intro, you talked about the full spectrum of disability, and that's that's for me, that's really, really on point and very beautiful. It captures everything that I'm about because a lot of people, especially in this part of the world, will pigeonhole disability just as hearing impaired, visually impaired, and wheelchair bound, and none of the other invisible disabilities. So it's a whole spectrum. We all have different experiences, different needs, different ways in which we need the world to adapt to us and accommodate us as we are different, you know. And I just had this weird, I don't know if it's weird, but I went to a program yesterday. It was a disability conference, an awards honoring people with disabilities or people championing disability issues here in Ghana. And I'm someone who I think I am pretty independent, and I had just happened to be at the program with my colleague from work. And as soon as I entered and I was asking, where do I sign in? Where do I do this? One of the people attending to guests said to me, do you want your aide to sign in for you? And do you want your aide to sign in for you? I don't know if you heard what I said. And I just paused and I looked at her and I said, she's my colleague. I don't have an aide. And thankfully, I'm here with her so she could learn a little bit more about why we need to do more advocacy work. And then fast forward to like a minute later, I sign us both in, right? And then I'm asking for the washroom. And these same people tell me, oh, she can take you. She can take you there. And as frustrating as it is, it just showed me how much people undermine or disregard disability. And I'm not visually impaired. I walk with a limitation, but I walk, and I wasn't there asking for support or for help in any way at all. But it's just unfortunate that way too often people see if you're disabled, it means you need support, you need help. And I was recently telling someone that I'm not here to add to the disability porn. Like people have these ideas about all the ways in which if they're supportive, then they're an advocate. But we're all different. We have different needs. And I wish that misconception can be debunked and we can all be seen as different people with different needs, but in the larger category of being people with disabilities. I hope that answers your question.
No, that's a great
Yeah.
example. And it's one I hear, like
Hmm.
it shows up in
Hmm.
different ways,
Hmm.
because to your point, like you said, everyone's different and people sometimes
Yes,
do
yes.
need help. But
Hmm.
I think what I've seen a lot that seems to be most bothersome is the assumption first,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Because
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong,
Hmm.
if you need help, you need help, and it's
There's
awesome that
nothing
there are
wrong with
people there to help
going.
you. But if
Yeah.
if the assumption outright, sometimes that assumption is not only that you need help, but also what you
Hmm.
need,
Hmm.
right? Rather than just
Exactly.
asking the person like, hey,
Can I help
or
you with this?
making, what's available known
Mhm.
and letting people make those
Definitely, definitely,
decisions.
definitely. But there was that over clamoring effort
Yeah.
to
Do
just give
think
me
like
help.
assume
Yeah,
what you needed, it sounded like.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, that
So
I can imagine that's quite difficult to navigate.
yeah.
Um, what do you What are some of the challenges? So that's something that I know that you've experienced, but what about in your work? Like as you advocate for inclusive
Mm-mm.
education, what are some of
Mm-mm.
the barriers that you come up against? Is it similar? Are there additional or different ones?
So
Um,
we at GIG we support any and everyone who has a disability, prioritizing girls. Um, but as I was talking about, the fact that disability is not even acknowledged,
mm,
right, publicly in our schools when we sensed that some of our students were struggling and we thought, oh, maybe it's a learning disability or a learning difference. Let's get them tested or let's get them diagnosed so we could come up with a proper IEP, which is an individualized education plan, work with the school to come up with that for them. The pushback was, well, these students are just dumb. They're not trying. They're not trying hard enough. And that was the pushback then. And but fortunately, our student who is visually impaired, her disability is visible enough that if she's navigating spaces, she has her cane and people make way for her. But the students who are dyslexic, who have issues with dyscalculia and other invisible disabilities. That's where the real battle is. Like they're being
Interesting.
called dumb, they're being called stupid, they're not trying hard enough. And so, yeah.
And so, um, and is this you've seen this the is your work you're speaking about your work specifically in Ghana? Because I know you've done
Yes,
research and
it's
work in
more
other
so in
places.
Ghana than the US. We do more advocacy work,
Got
but
it.
this is speaking specifically to Ghana that
Okay.
we've experienced this
Sure.
like lack of acknowledging. Yeah.
Wow, so you guys are really helping, I guess, people understand just
Hmm.
diversity of ways people learn and operate, and that's
Exactly.
awesome work that you're
We've
doing.
supported students to get proper diagnoses, and other people have come to us and say that because we've heard about what you guys are doing or what you all are doing, I also felt like my learning difference or my learning disability was not, they were attributed to witchcraft, they were attributed to something, everything other than maybe there's an actual difference in the way that this person is learning. So we've heard from people saying that because of the advocacy work that GIG is doing, I got tested and I learned that I'm dyslexic or I have ADHD or I have this, and that. So
And then
yeah.
you can do something about that.
Yes, exactly. That we could actually advocate and be in the classroom, know that the same time that the student next to you has is not the same that you would need, you know? So we've made sure I don't want to say petition, but we petitioned with schools to ensure that students are getting double time, separate classrooms when they're doing their test, because that's what my lived experience was as a teacher and
Got
as
it.
a person who, back in the US, as a teacher and as a person who acquired a disability later in life. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's really interesting and an awesome impact to have. And I know that you have also
Hmm.
recently published a book.
Yes.
And I I don't want us to get too far before I bring that up because
Hmm. Hmm.
I would love from what we've talked about, I know that your journey with disability personally and professionally
Hmm.
is a part of your book. And I just want to give you
Hmm.
space to talk about your book. What led
Right.
you to want to speak about this more
Hmm.
publicly and put yourself out there and tell your story?
So my book is called My Life After Death, Learning to Overcome and I think Live. I need to get the title
It's
correct in
due.
my
You just
head.
published it.
Is
We'll give you a break.
My Life After Death, Learning to Overcome and Live. So it really captures my journey. Prior to age 18, I was la di da di da, just living my life as if nothing would ever happen, right? And so then April 4th, 2003, my car accident happened, and then I'm left with a traumatic brain injury, a stroke, and a lot of cognitive issues that I didn't have before. So the book just chronicles some of the experiences, the challenges that I've had as coming to acceptance. And I'm sure maybe from your experience personally and professionally, you know that there's a period, if somebody acquires a disability, there's a period where they probably are grieving their former selves and then accepting who they are. So why I decided to publish this book was I have two kids. I am a mom of two kids. And anytime there was one specific moment, we went to pick up my son from school, and then he got into the car and he said, "Well, my friend asked me, why does my mom walk like that?" And I said, "Like what?" And so he starts to mimic the way I walk, and it really broke me. And children are so naive, right? They don't question anything. He came into the world, all he knows is that he has a mom who loves him and a dad who loves him also. And mom is different from dad in some ways, in some very obvious ways, but we never sat him down and said to him, "This is what happened to your mom. This is the situation." But the questions kept coming, and it was coming from his classmates, probably his teachers, asking, "Why is your mom that way? How come when your mom is talking, she's not expressing with her other hand? And how come this, and that?" And so it's it's my answers for my kids. I I've never actually framed it this way, but it's my answers for my kids about the questions that they have. And so they make sense out of it later on in their life. If and when they don't ever have to like advocate for me or explain to somebody about why their mom is the way they are. Yeah.
That's really a beautiful foundation for writing a book. Um,
It never clicked to me, but it was the pivotal moment last year or a year and a half ago. I was going to write a children's book, and then it wasn't coming, so decided why not write my life story. The children's book may still come because I think children are naive, they are a clean slate,
yeah.
they don't know that much. They know a lot. They're very perceptive, but it's us who taint them with our experiences and the things, our lived experience. So
I think
yeah.
that's really, really powerful. And also, I mean, you're working with kids in education too. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think you're being able to have an influence on the way kids see things does make a big difference. Um,
That's the hope.
because I think our kids are similar ages. But those first couple years of life,
Hmm.
they're,
Hmm.
I've fielded similar questions in my case
Hmm.
about my dad or about other
Yeah,
friends of mine.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and 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 it has been, just some some people walk differently, or some people don't walk,
Hmm.
or some people,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
and and they can when they get that exposure, and then you don't have the negativity attached to it, it does become, just a fact
Yeah,
of life, so
definitely,
it's,
definitely,
I hope
definitely.
you write a children's book. I think it would be awesome.
I hope, I think that's the next thing. And I will start calling myself Elizabeth Patterson, author slash blah, blah, blah. So I hope,
No,
yeah,
you already are. You are an
yeah,
author. That is,
author,
you've already done that.
founder,
You can own that.
nonprofit, advocates, all of that. Yeah. So I started the book and I had some people look at it, but just got distracted. So I will work on it. Yeah,
That's
I think
awesome.
I will
Well, I
definitely
just
work on it.
in such a like personally and professionally positioned in such a way,
Mhm.
already having so much impact, and I just think
Mhm.
that's the kind of things that can help change those narratives.
Mhm.
Um,
Definitely.
what no, so in crafting, whether it's in your book or in any future books you may write,
Mhm.
what is the image or story that you or narrative that you want to tell about disability? What do you hope that children, you know, or adults or
Mhm.
society,
Mhm.
what do you wish that narrative would be?
Okay, so I believe when we met, I was using the term differently abled quite often. And perhaps I was shy of using the word disabled, right? Because to me, disabled meant not able to do something, not able to be all these things. But differently abled meant to me we are equipped with different abilities and our strengths are, somebody recently said, our superpowers, and that our disabilities are our superpowers. And in the work that I'm doing, I would hope that everybody can come to that acceptance and realize that the world is made up of different people, different races, different genders, different ways of defining who we are. And the things that set us, our differences should be the things that make us more accepting of each other because um, what you are lacking is probably what I have that will complement you, right? And so if we come to terms with that, I think it'll be, not to sound corny or very kumbaya, it'll be a very beautiful society, very beautiful existence once we let all those barriers of our differences fall apart and accept
Yeah.
each other as, yeah.
And I think, I mean, has your perception of the word disabled evolved also?
I use it more willingly now. I use it more willingly. Whereas in the past, I was just saying, I'm differently abled, and wherever that came from, I don't recall, but I was kind of adamant about not calling myself disabled. But
Yeah.
yes, now. I would say I'm a woman with a disability. I am a disabled woman. So, and
Right.
however you want to take it, you could take it for
Well,
that. Yeah.
and language is always very personal, right?
Yeah,
No one can tell
definitely.
anyone what to do with it,
Definitely.
but
Definitely.
but there's I think I've heard, again, many people talking about getting that negativity away from
Hmm,
the word
hmm,
disability,
hmm,
because
hmm,
to your point, it's one
hmm,
it's one element of difference that exists in our
hmm,
very
hmm.
diverse world.
That's very true.
However,
That's
people decide they want to speak about themselves, it doesn't
hmm,
take away from, that uh, it that there are a variety of ways people exist through this through
hmm,
this world,
hmm,
and
hmm,
that
hmm.
makes it very beautiful.
Yeah,
To your
definitely.
kumbaya point, a much an
Yeah,
inclusive and beautiful world.
yeah, yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Hmm.
What do you, um, how, what do you advice do you have for someone who maybe is hearing the misconceptions and assumptions that you've shared, who
Hmm.
is saying, "Oh my gosh, that's me. I felt that
Hmm.
way," or "That's what I used to think," or,
Hmm.
what advice do you have for someone who is ready to be more inclusive but maybe doesn't know where to start? What would you recommend?
So it's like, I mean, you're in the US. Everybody has that one black friend, right? We all have that token black friend, and we want to, everybody, as shameful as it can be, everybody would say, "Oh, Brian, that's my African American friend," or if they're bold enough, they'll say my black friend. So we need to name it, find people who are different from us, right? And you don't have to befriend them just to say that I'm friends with Elizabeth because she has a disability. But when you meet Elizabeth, when you meet Brittany, don't let the difference that they have or their difference overpower the person that they are, and just be accepting of who we are. And for me, I would say that my disability, even though it feels like as overpowered my life, the last half of my life has taken over my life. It's just a fraction of my identity and my story. Yeah. So I
I
wish
like
people
that.
would get over themselves and get to know people for who they are.
Right. I like
Mm.
that. That's great advice. Um, I mean, I think the things that I'm taking away from what you're saying are just, you know, not making assumptions,
Hmm.
and openness to whether it's meeting people or
Hmm.
learning. It sounds like the advocacy work that you're doing is really getting more people to understand the
Hmm.
depth and breadth of the
Hmm.
diversity
Hmm.
of visible and apparent and
Invisible
non-apparent
disabilities. Yeah.
disabilities.
Yes.
Um, and also, it just everything you're explaining, and even how much you've put yourself out there to share your experience and your evolution and transformation personally and through your advocacy really
Hmm.
humanizes all of it. And I think that
Yeah.
that's really important for people to, that's why part of why I have these conversations is just
Hmm.
to have more people just get a chance to talk, and and more
Hmm.
people hear
Yeah.
from all different kinds of voices and backgrounds.
Hmm.
Um, and different perspectives globally. I mean, I know you've lived in the US, I know you
Hmm.
live in Ghana
Hmm.
now, and you've worked in other places of the world. So you've really
Hmm.
seen quite a wide spectrum also. So,
Right. Right.
but this is something that's happening all over, right? And
Hmm. Hmm.
getting
Hmm.
people to see it from a human lens, I think is
Yeah.
makes sense, as a really important first
Right.
step. Do you have and last question I have for you? Is there any time that you've seen either a success story from your work? I think you mentioned one earlier, where where inclusion went really well, either for yourself or
Hmm.
one of your students, that just is a model of what you hope can happen more systemically.
Okay. So at the conference that I attended yesterday, I think even though there's some fine tuning that needs to be tweaked for the next time, the it was it was a noble program. It was, I think, the first time in the 11 years that I've lived here in Ghana that I've seen such a wide gathering of people with disabilities in one space. And then additionally being honored, right? And then the people who hosted the program, one of them is a visually impaired journalist who I have had the privilege to be interviewed by. And he's a professional through and through. He's stellar. If you don't, this is gonna sound stupid, but if you don't see Paul, um, you would not ever think that he is visually impaired. Like, because he's such a professional, he does everything as if he's a normal person, right? And so I for one, I think representation is very, very key. They did it well. They didn't go and get someone who's far removed from the experience, the population to host the program. They wanted us to see ourselves and what we could aspire to become. And then out my student, one of my students who fortunately we supported to get a diagnosis of dyslexia. I don't think we never sat her down or we never sit down our students to explain to them why they went to see a psychologist or some experts to go through a bunch of tests. We never explained it to them, but they themselves know that they struggle, and then all of a sudden they have tools to be able to do better in school. One of my students, she got diagnosed when she was in the equivalent of seventh grade. And because she had that diagnosis, um, I think she's been able to channel the diagnosis and get the support, and now is studying engineering in one of the universities.
Awesome.
So that is not something you ever hear of, right? You don't hear of that. You'll just hear, well, maybe I don't hear of it here in Ghana. You'll just hear the sad story. She was this, she was that, and then fortunately, she wasn't able to finish school, and now she's dropped out or she's pregnant somewhere. But because I would like to think that because she's been empowered, that's another word that I don't really like using, but empowered through this diagnosis, and she has the resources to do better for herself. She has done it, and now she's killing it in engineering school. Yeah.
Well, that is a perfect story to end on. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
so I thank you for your time, Elizabeth. It was really great to hear from you. And I'm not looking at my list, but I think you're my first international guest. So I think it makes me happy too,
Oh,
because I
I'm
definitely
glad to
want.
be the first. Yeah, I'm glad to be the
No, but I
first.
like having, people share different parts of the world and
Mhm,
what people
mhm,
are dealing with that have this common connection. But anyway, thank you very much for being here. I will make sure to include some links in the comments for anyone who's
mhm,
interested in reading more, well, connecting with
mhm,
Elizabeth or reading
mhm.
her book. And